Good morning. My name is Angélica Vázquez-Ortega. I'm Associate Professor at Bowling Green State University, and today I will be presenting you on evaluating the effectiveness of amending farm soil with dredged sediments, implications on crop yield, and soil health. First, I want to start discussing what is dredging and why it is relevant. So, federal navigational channels in the US are being dredged by the Army Corps of Engineers, and in some instances, some of these ports are dredged yearly. This is the case for the Toledo Harbor, where these navigational channels need to be dredged yearly in order to secure boats to move different goods to the port. So typically, the dredged sediments, when they are being dredged, they have been dumped back into the open waters of Lake Erie. However, there are concerns regarding the potential impact on the water quality. In specific, these sediments can be rich and rich in nutrients and heavy metals, and they can be redistributed into the water column, affecting the water quality and also the health of the aquatic organisms. In addition, Lake Erie, the Western Lake Erie, has been suffering algae blooms for the last decades, and there is a concern that this redistribution of nutrients can exacerbate the algae blooms in the area. Therefore, the state of Ohio has prohibited the open disposal of the dredged sediments, and it's asking for beneficial uses for this material. Today, I will be talking about one potential beneficial use that can be using the dredged material as a potential farm soil amendment, putting the dredged material on top of the farmland, tilling that, and then growing different crops. In our region, soybean, wheat, or corn are the typical cash crops. So here in these two tables, I'm going to be showing you different chemical parameters that characterize the dredge materials of the Toledo Harbor. The first table, it's showing different chemical parameters for a typical farm soil versus a dredge material obtained from the Toledo Harbor. And I just want to highlight that the dredge material is enriched in organic matter and in organic carbon or inorganic carbon. And also, when we look at the heavy metal content, the content of these heavy metals in the dredge material is very similar to that of the farm soil. The other table, it's comparing the dredge sediments in two different sampling campaigns with optimal agronomic values when growing soybean and corn. We can observe that the cation exchange capacity and the bioavailable potassium, magnesium, and calcium are very similar to those recommended. The bioavailable P by Meclic 3 method is slightly higher. However, this is beneficial because it will be adding this limiting nutrient into the farm soil. In overall, the idea of this research is to investigate the soil health benefits of adding dredge sediment into farm soils, and we can look at this through different lenses. What are the biological, the physical, and the chemical benefits of adding the dredge material? The specific objective of my research is to quantify the effect of dredge sediment material on soil health and crop yields in farm soils, and this is the focus of today's presentation. Also, we are focusing on determining the bioaccumulation of inorganic and organic contaminants in the different grains or fruits and vegetables. And this is going to be a part of the topic that Siksha Kautan is going to be presenting today after the break in this session. Also, we have we want to measure the export of nutrients or heavy metal into the waterways. And this is going to be a topic that Richmond said is going to be presenting on November 12th in this conference. Okay, so now I'm going to show you some results presented among the different research that it's going on, the different experiments that are going on in my research group. The first one, it's a greenhouse experiment where soybean was planted in 5-gallon buckets that have different ratios of soil under sediment, going from 100% farm soil, 10 dredge, 90 soil, 20 dredge, 80 soil, and 100% dredge. So what we observe is that the below biomass or the root system of the soybean plants increase as a function of adding more dredge sediment to the buckets. Also, we can observe that the cation exchange capacity increased as more dredge was added, and the pH was slightly alkaline as dredge sediment were added. We also observe that the calcium content also increased. Similar results were also observed when corn was grown in a greenhouse setup as well. In this case, here are the different ratios that we use, going from no dredge to 100% dredge. And here is an illustration of how the corn plants look like towards the end of the experiment. This image here is showing how the root system is changing as a function of adding more dredge, again giving a more robust, larger biomass as dredge sediment was added. The trend for the cation exchange capacity and the calcium content in the soil were similar. The higher the dredge, the higher the content of the values of these two parameters. In addition, in a greenhouse experiment, we also determined the effect of adding dredge sediment as a farm soil amendment when specialty crops were used, in specific lettuce, tomatoes, and carrots. Here are images illustrating how these crops look like in the greenhouse. And the data that I'm going to be presenting in this slide, it's only related to tomatoes, but the same exact trends were observed for lettuce and carrots. So the root system weight also increased as a function of adding more sediments, and the same was observed for the cation and calcium content. So far I have shown you data in greenhouse experiments. And now the next step will be, let's bring all of this information, and let's see if we can get similar results in a field scale project. And for that, I have developed a series of demonstration forms, and today I'm going to show you some of those results. So in previous research, the corn yield in a demonstration farm, when dredge sediment was added, was that the yield decreased. The more dredge sediment was added, the lower the yield for the corn, which is opposite to what we were observing in the greenhouse experiment. After having a discussion with the farmer, we came to the conclusion that maybe the heavy machinery that was used to spread the material compacted the soil and affected the penetration of the root of the corn, affecting their yields. And because of that, we have developed this setup, this design for this for this demonstration farm, taking into consideration the effect of traffic. If we observe this design here, traffic is taken into consideration. For instance, the upper portion, dredge sediment was added, and of course the traffic is embedded there. The middle portion have no dredge application and no traffic, and the bottom one have no dredge plus traffic. So we ask the owner of the machinery to pass this equipment a few times to just simulate the compaction, uh, if that's it's taken into consideration. So that's how we designed this, and half of the field was planted with corn and the other half was planted with soybean, and I'm going to show you yields for year 2024. However, I also want to show you why we added the dredge sediment in the upper portion of the field, and that has to do with the bioavailable phosphorus measured by MECLIC 3, where the content of bioavailable P in the plus DM plus traffic was 33, and then no dredge, no traffic 55, no dredge traffic was 50. So we decided that the the upper portion, it has lower content of P, so therefore that will be the area that we will be adding the dredge sediments. And in order to increase the bioavailable P content, we added 90 tons of dredge material per acre. Here are some illustrations of how the dredge sediment looked like and the machinery that was used to spread the dredge sediment. And then after that, the farmer tilled in the field. Here are some images showing how the soybeans look like uh, in August 5th of this year. And now are some images of how the corn crop look like across different treatments in, again, August 5th. So the data that I want to show you now, it's related to the yields. So I want to know how the yields are changing with the different treatments. So we had that for all treatments, with dredge, traffic, no dredge, no traffic, no dredge, traffic, the yield of soybean was very similar. There was no significant differences among these values. So it seems that no matter the traffic or not, or the presence or not of the sediments, the the yield for soybean was very similar. However, we saw different results for the corn, where the corn yield in the control, in this specific one, no dredge, no traffic, was very similar to that with dredge and traffic. However, it was significantly lower when we have no dredge but the compaction. So it seems that adding the dredge can offset the negative effect of compaction in this specific demonstration experiment. Okay, so now to finalize this presentation, I want to say a few implications regarding to the agricultural and also environmental implications. Again, in most instances, uh, looking more closely to greenhouse experiments, we can observe that the higher the dredge material ratio, the higher the content of organic carbon, cation exchange capacity, calcium, and also slightly more alkaline soils. I did not show this data, but also the average bulk density in the greenhouse experiments decreased. However, we observed the opposite in the demonstration farm. In another study, the dirt material from Lake Erie or from the Toledo Harbor in specific had high bacterial biodiversity. And I'm not showing this, but Tiksha, it's gonna, and other students in my lab are also studying the bioaccumulation, and it seems that adding the dredge sediments, it's not preferentially accumulating heavy metals into the edible portion of the plants. So in general, dredge sediments might be beneficial as a farm soil amendment. So some environmental implications can be that by adding the dredge sediment, we can put less synthetic or organic fertilizer. And in many instances, the application of these fertilizers, because they have such a high concentration of phosphorus, they can export a higher content of these nutrients into the waterways. I am not showing this data either, but we have results that that are showing that when dredge sediments were added to the farm soils, the export of nutrients and heavy metals were very similar to those when 100% farm soil was added to the system. Again, we are going to be also studying this in the demonstration farm that I show you via the use of edge of field instrumentation, and we're going to be monitoring surface and subsurface runoff, and we will have a better idea of how the export of nutrients and heavy metals look like when we are adding dredge sediments to a real farm soil. Now, I want to say thank you to all of the principal investigators that have worked with me over the years in this type of specific research. I also want to say thank you to my graduate students, including undergraduate, master, and PhD students. Finally, I want to say thank you to all of the sponsors that have helped me fund this research. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.